globalization has opened up various opportunities and challenges for the new breed of professionals.
Globalization has had a profound impact on every aspect of life, including higher education. Today, Indian students are seeking aspirations to go abroad, and students from around the world are prepared to come and spend time in India. Increasingly, this recognition that global education is relevant has become the dominant thinking on the part of students and parents to seek higher education aspirations for their children. That means that institutions need to be empowered to fulfill that goal of providing global education.
And preparing them for these challenges and opportunities is the O.P. Jindal Global University. And this was the very premise for the panel discussion that took place at the Jindal Global University campus.
Distinct Indian view and voice on global affairs.
Hello and welcome to this special sponsored feature show, Global Education for the Future, brought to you in association with the O.P. Jindal Global University. I'm Pallavi Basu, and today we'll be discussing the importance of global education and what careers are in store for students who take part in that. To discuss that, I'm joined by our esteemed panel. Our panelists amongst themselves have over 100 years of cumulative experience in global teaching. Let me then introduce my panelists. To my right here, we have Professor C. Rajkumar, who is the founding Vice Chancellor of the O.P. Jindal Global University. He is also the Dean of the Jindal Global Law School. To his right, we have Professor C. Gopinath, who is the Dean of the Jindal Global Business School. And to his right, we have Professor Sudarshan Ramaswamy, who is the Dean and Executive Director at the Center for Ethics, Law and Political Economy at the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy. Let's start with my guests on the left now. We have Professor Sanjeev Sani, who is the Executive Director at the Center for Innovative Leadership and Change in the Jindal Global Business School. To his left, we have Professor Bennett McClellan, who is a Vice Dean of the Jindal School of Liberal Arts and Humanities. And finally, we have Professor Sriram Chaulia, who is the Dean and Executive Director at the Center for Global Governance and Policy at the Jindal School of International Affairs. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. Professor Rajkumar, if I could begin this discussion with you first. Your university talks about global education, but what do you really mean about global education? And does that necessarily lead to global career opportunities?
Well, for us, O.P. Jindal Global University's vision is about offering an educational opportunity which is global in nature, that includes a curriculum which is global, a course structure which recognizes that study of any subject has to have a dependence on many other societies, and also a program and faculty which brings together people from around the world. But in many ways, global education is about understanding the world better and systematically and methodically recognizing that the teaching pedagogy, the research methodology, including the research centers and the learning experiences of students recognizes that the educational opportunities that ought to be offered to students should be global in nature. It is not about just understanding the world, but also understanding the Indian society in a global context.
But where do you think India stands on this map of this global education, and how is your institute helping to further that cause?
Well, one of the big challenges of higher education in India has been the fact that we have not been able to adequately benchmark our universities with institutions around the world. It is important to recognize that we need to radically transform the existing institutional structures in which higher education and environment is regulated. And that's where we need to look at the various stakeholders, be it the faculty, be it the students, be it the curriculum, be it the courses, and more importantly, what kind of international exposure that we intend to offer to our students, which means that the students have an opportunity to pursue exchange programs. There are a number of joint degree programs with institutions around the world. We also have classroom experiences which connects more than 2 universities into that environment where students of this university get that option.
That's right. Professor Sani, if I could come to you on the similar strain, he's talking about internationalizing our education system. But every education system is as good as its faculty. What do you mean when you say of a global faculty, and how do you recruit and retain them, since academia in India at least is not an attractive job?
Global faculty means for the people who have publishing in a good international index journals, the people who have studied abroad or worked abroad, and 3, they're contributing to the international research. Recruitment, yes, it was a big challenge when we started this, but now I would say it's more or less like a branding for us. Now people know that this is one of the best university, probably in the Southeast Asia, and people are applying themselves. Second, when we publish various papers in the top journals, people come to know about our institute. And the most important is that when we go to the conferences, we project this university, we are initiating a lot of research, we are presenting papers, and people come to know about this institute, and they themselves are interested to come and work here. The main thing is the retention. It's easy to hire a faculty, but to retaining is the most challenging job. For that, we have various policies. One is that, obviously we provide a housing on campus. We have various policies where we are encouraging faculty members to do research. Like the research grants are there. The staff development policy where 21 days every faculty member can go abroad, participate in the workshops, seminars, conferences, can present their work. There are a number of schemes which are attracting many good faculty, and those are the factors where we can retain those faculty members as well.
So Professor Gopinath, in India there are so many institutes offering MBA courses, BBA courses. What distinguishes your institute from those others?
To build upon the point that Raj mentioned earlier, most universities just have international collaborations when they mean go global. We go beyond that. We create a global atmosphere for the students to learn. And so we are deepening global content in our courses. We have joint conferences, joint research, teaching exchanges, and so on. And after all businesses are global today. Either the markets are global or sourcing is global, and quite often both. And that's the environment we provide our students to learn in through entrepreneurship clubs, facilities by which they can start businesses, by deepening content in the courses so that they read international cases. It's not just going to another institute overseas to have a global experience, but you've got to create that right here. That's how we are different from all the other schools.
Professor Chawla, if I can come to you from business to international affairs now, I have a similar question. How is this different? What are you offering your students? And more importantly, after this what are the career opportunities that will be presented in front of them?
A School of International Affairs is not commonplace in our country. So what we have done is, out of conviction that the social sciences, especially study of foreign affairs, need to be raised to a new pedestal in this country, in consonance with India's rising military and economic might. So the whole idea was to situate ourselves as an Indian university that is promoting a distinct Indian view and voice on global affairs. And initially people are skeptical about careers. What is going to come about if you do a master's or a bachelor's program in diplomacy or in global affairs? But what we have proven many skeptics wrong is by generating active careers. Our students have gotten into organizations from wide range of sectors. And it's not just civil service or academics. There's a lot for those who apply for a bachelor's and a master's program and acquire the skills, the foreign language, the internships, and then build upon those to make these diverse careers from economic development and human rights to peace and conflict resolution to risk analysis.
Professor Sudarshan, if I could come to you next. Similarly, what are the aspirations of students who are pursuing a master's in public policy here?
Public policy has hitherto been seen as something that people in government do anyway. As part of their daily job, they make policy, they implement programs, and it hasn't been given the seriousness of reflection that it deserves. Now what we are trying to do here is, from the outset, from the very foundational stage, we are instilling in students the ability for practical judgment by learning and incorporating what other disciplines have to teach that have a bearing on public policy. It's meant to advance the common weal. And that means that you need a very strong ethical foundation, because you're in it for the common good. And that's a big responsibility. That is the kind of public policy that we try to teach, which draws on multiple disciplines. As for careers, so think tanks, research institutions, the media. Increasingly, in order to improve the quality of the media, we need people who understand public policy. Then there are the traditional development organizations, and then you have the United Nations. Many organizations in the United Nations will do seek out people with a public policy training.
But Professor, finally if I could come to you, public policy is neglected in India. What about liberal arts? I don't have a word for it. Our mindset is beyond the sciences. There's pretty much nothing else. Liberal arts, I mean, a hobby at best. So where is the space, the opportunities?
I like to think of it not as liberal arts, but liberating arts. So what is it that frees the humans? And talking about the humanities, but we're actually talking about humanity. And then the question is, how do you actually approach that as curriculum? And what does that prepare a person for after they finish school? And as curriculum, we're looking at the questions, the big questions that face the human race. How do we know what we know? How do we approach inquiry? How do we explain the human behavior that science can't explain? The civilizations, and how do we develop things in cooperation with each other? How do we express ourselves as humans? Where does the emotion come from? Where's the soul? And how do we convince others of our views? So finally we get to the fifth question, which is how do we all cooperate and live on this planet? If you look at a graduate that's capable of answering those 5 questions, the question I would have is, where couldn't they go? Don't we need these in business? Don't we need these in government? Don't we need these in medicine and law and every profession and the media? So I think that the question of the liberating artist as opposed to the liberal artist is the person that the 21st century needs to help resolve the conflicts, to teach us, and to help us all figure out how to get along. So what is the role of liberating arts, of liberal artists, of liberal arts, and the humanities? It is the essence of how do we as a species go forward.
So there's life beyond maths. Well, that's good news for students like me. But on that note, we're going to slip into a short break. But coming up next, we're going to open our floor for all our panelists to be questioned by the real stakeholders in all this, the students. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching this special sponsored feature show, Global Education for the Future, brought to you in association with the OP Jindal Global University. As I said before the break, we're going to throw our floor open for questions from the real stakeholders, the students. Let's listen in what they have to ask our esteemed panelists. Okay, the gentleman there.
My name is Akash Pandey. My question is for Professor Gopinath. As the students have been recruited from the business school to various industries, and the industries, when they take them, they train them for 6 months or 1 year. They spend a lot of money onto them. So how exactly this global exposure is helping the students, or rather have an edge to the students for the industries?
In 2 ways. One is the students are exposed to a global environment in which business operates. And secondly, when the companies train them, they are training them on systems and processes of the company before they assign them to various jobs. And the student is expected to bring this global perspective in the jobs that they perform. They might get in various functional areas like accounting or sales or marketing. And having this global perspective helps them perform that job, whether that company is operating globally or it's operating locally but facing global competition. And therefore the exposure and the training the students get in the coursework here and the program here puts them in a better situation to be able to deal with those kinds of situations when they are on the job.
I'm Pratyush. My question is to Dr. Sriram Cholia. Sir, I would like to ask a simple question. It is kind of a general as well. Like Indian education system, the traditional education system has been held in high esteem since past, which is being pinpointed and not multidisciplinary, not interdisciplinary. So why do you think now is the time to turn to interdisciplinary kind of studies in India?
I think the simple answer is globalization, Pratyush. Globalization creates the kind of complexity of real world issues where there are too many stakeholders now. But our educational system has not been able to cope with this complexity. And this is a small attempt at Jindal School of International Affairs and at OP Jindal Global University to be able to train young people to think about all the angles to a single problem, and to look at it from different perspectives and to see if there is a solution that can draw upon the insights not just of one discipline but multiple ones.
My name is Tatiksha Mohanty and my question is directed towards Professor Bennett. Professor, you spoke about the importance of liberal arts, liberating arts in the 21st century. My question to you would be, how would Jindal School of Liberal Arts and Humanities' treatment of the arts be different from the other existing Indian universities?
We are looking at a great deal of diversity in the faculty. We're looking at a great deal of diversity in the students. And our specific bridge is our program is partly here in India and partly in the United States, and we're also possibly developing other country connections. So the intention is, from the beginning, an international global experience, so that we realize over time that the lens by which we solve problems is not the only lens that's possible, and that others might have developed better lenses, better methods, better tools. Our program intentionally puts you in, as students, into contact with that kind of chaotic, that kind of multidisciplinary, that kind of multicultural environment from day one, with the intention of the last 2 years being finished in an entirely foreign environment.
My name is Thomas Beacon. I'm a student of the OP Jindal School of Government and Public Policy. My question goes to Professor Sudarshan. What are the challenges that you face currently in producing these globalized policy makers, and what prospects do you see as we go forward? Will you be able to catch up with the increasing demands for public policy makers as we move on into the future?
It's indeed the case that problems and issues in the world have become global. They cross national boundaries, and so the world is really in need of a political governance counterpart to the fact that trade and economy have become globalized, and goods and even people to some extent cross boundaries, and there's a big thrust in migration. So this is indeed a challenge, and fashioning solutions to this challenge is part of the quest in this institution. It's not that you have formulae for solving them. It's about having people with the ability to internalize information, data, as you say, get the knowledge, acquire some wisdom, and apply the knowledge as a matter of practical judgment. So the more people we have with that kind of background and training, the greater the chances are that we'll be able to go post-MDGs to the post-2015 world with a vision for development that's more inclusive and more effective than we have seen it till now.
My question is for Professor Rajkumar. Can global education help India to become a global power?
Well, absolutely. I think one of the big challenges of India's growth and development is the fact that we have not been able to respond to the challenge of higher education. As you know very well, we are a young nation. I mean, over 60% of India is less than 35 years old. And so I strongly believe that the fact that if we can enhance and respond to this demographic dividend that we have by empowering our young people to be given the best quality of education that India could offer, and to help them pursue not just fruitful careers, but also to look at social transformation. If we want to create responsible global citizenship, we essentially have to expose the students to a range of disciplines which not only equip them with the knowledge and expertise and experience, but also help them seek that social transformation. The big challenges of Indian higher education continues to be the fact that how do we improve the quality of teaching and research which will respond to the global aspirations of these students. Increasingly, the emphasis in societies around the world is a knowledge-based society, and not just in the economic context, but also to respond to the big challenges of our time. All these challenges require rigorous thought and reflection, as well as knowledge to empower societies, and that's the kind of global educational opportunities that institutions such as the OP Jindal Global University is attempting to offer.
On that eloquent note, I'd like to thank all our panelists, the students, as well as our viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay happy, stay curious.